established a protection basis. Currently, the population is growing, and gradually we have to transfer these horses back to the nature. The last step is to reintroduce the horses into the wild. If we keep them with us, it's always the domestication of the species. It's like the children. When they grow up, we have to set them free. We have to ask them to start to live independently away from the parents. We cannot keep them always with the protection center. Previously, we have also carried out biological monitoring, and we have also noticed some changes with their genetic features. For the domestication, it's a way of protection. First of all, we get these animals to the conservation center, and this is a way to keep them alive. However, domestication will also cause problems. For example, how we can guarantee the capabilities of reproduction, how can we best protect these genetic resources? We have to take into consideration of all these. For example, with the environment of domestication, you cannot give 100% natural diet to these animals, and the living conditions are artificial. In that circumstances, those horses, they will like the flowers growing up in the greenhouse. They do not have this resistance to natural tests, and they are not fully independent. That's why we have to send them back to nature so that they could be getting back to their original habitat. They can live independently, they can confront with the natural forces so that they can be restoring their capabilities. And for our installation of horses on board the trucks, we have, for example, reshaped the whole structure of these trucks. This time we have separated the whole herd into several trucks. Could we do it another way? For example, get all the horses on board on a single truck. What's the reason for the separation during the trip? First of all, from the perspective of biology, we are not sure yet what is the most suitable size of the herd during the transportation. For the horses, inside the herd, they will have the ranking of superiority. For example, they have the number 1, number 2, number 3, etc. of the whole group. It's naturally formulated order. For example, when they want to have some water, usually the number 1 will have this privilege to drink the water first. So when we do the shipment of these horses, sometimes they will fight with each other. For example, the higher ranked ones, they will bully the inferior ones. And they have clearly set up orders. For the artificially bred ones, within these circulated area, we have the preset orders among these animals. However, if you have a mixture of all these horses, it's quite possible for us to witness some fights among the creatures. Some of the horses may be hurt, and some may even have the risk of dying. So we have to be very vigilant. That is a consideration from a biological perspective, and then we also have to consider the impacts on the environment. For example, if you have to put all these 20 plus heads of horses together in the same truck, you need bigger vehicles, and you have to release all of them all at once. These may create tension for the environment. But today we are trying smaller groups released in separation. I think it's more appropriate. This time, the Gansu province is trying out this new practice. We also have other provinces and regions, for example, in Mongolia and the Xinjiang region. If this time we can set a very good example, it will be very inspiring for the other neighboring provinces and regions, and even for the other countries, for example, Kazakhstan, etc. So, Professor, during the beginning of our live stream program, we said that the Przewalski horse is the level 1 protected animal at national level. It's the only undomesticated species. What's the difference between this wild horse and domestic horses? Could you please tell us more about the features about these wild horses? I think it's a long story because most of our viewers, they are not experts for biology. So I will do it in a simple way. Currently, for the feral horses, they are one of the modern species known as the horse, as the big family. This big family of horses was born dozens of thousands of years ago. It's a result of the ice age. And these horses, they like to live in open environments, especially on the steppes. And the steppes are the origin of the animal husbandry industry for human beings. And the horses live together with human beings for more than 2 million years. And tens of thousands of years ago, many horses went extinct. And then we had only 2 types of feral horses. One is called Przewalski horse, another type is a European horse. To the western side is European horses, European wild horse, and to the eastern side, it's called Zhunga horse or the Przewalski horse. At the end of 19th century, around 1887, the European wild horses went extinct in the Ukraine steppe. But later, their offsprings have been domesticated. The wild races went extinct about 100 years ago. So in that part of the earth, there are no more feral horses. And then there is a photographer that has discovered another type of feral horse. So we named this horse after him, and we call it the Przewalski horse. You have mentioned the time. During the evolution of the species, we think 2,000 years may be long for human being. But millions of years for the whole history of species and the development of the earth is just a moment. For example, we can recall the Han Dynasty. We also have this model of artifact produced during the Han Dynasty. This one is already a domesticated horse. This is one offspring species of the European feral horses. It's used for commercial transportation and also for military fights. It's a fighting horse. And this statue has been discovered in the tomb of a general. Back in the Han Dynasty, horses are luxury goods, and it's very important strategic resources for the battles. For example, dating back to the Han Dynasty, for those families breeding and keeping the horses, they could get subsidies from the local government. Whether for daily use or for the battles, horses back then were considered as a strategic resource. If we don't have the horses during the fight, we will be easily defeated by the enemies. And today we also have the breeding farm for the fighting horses. I would like to add up one more point. Now we are driving along the Hexi Corridor. We are moving from the eastern part of the corridor to the westernmost extreme of the Hexi Corridor. We are moving towards the west. In ancient times, it's also an avenue for the transportation of the horses, so we can also call it the road of horses. A personal feeling is that in this area of the Qilian Mountain, we have the mountainous roads. We also have the spring zones with the water coming from underground. Today we have the agricultural areas nearby, and this is an avenue of transportation connecting the east and west. In ancient times, when the nomadic people would like to extend their occupation area, they have to take this road, and they have also considered the horses as important resources for the development of the nation. In history, for our dynasties located in middle part of China, people wanted to extend the territory. If we send the soldiers on foot, it will take a lot of time. That's why people have chosen to ride horses. The Hexi Corridor in the past has been used as a main artery of transportation of commercial goods, because we would like to bring our goods, merchandises from the east to the west. Even during the past, for this area, the horses have played a very important role. Today, when we would like to calculate the strength of the vehicle, the power of the vehicle, we still use the horse power. And in the Chinese word for the avenue, for the road, we also apply this word meaning horse. We say it's a horse road. This time, we are actually passing through the Hexi Corridor officially. For the Wuwei, our departure point, it's located by the eastern side of the Hexi Corridor. Because you are in charge of the environment development, if we can very well manage the steps, it will absolutely help the restoration of the ecosystem. established this monitoring system to see the impact of restoration of grassland and steppes for the ecosystem. So you have prepared this board of information. This is an area called Babusha. We have made hard efforts for the restoration of ecosystem, and we have also fought against the desertification. We have managed the deserted area. We have also prepared some footages for you to look. This area is located to the southern part of the Tenggeli Desert. We have a total area of desert of 2.39 million mu of land. Today, all this area has been turned green, with a plantation of vegetation, trees, grass, etc. Still, I have to keep up with the plantation of trees and grass by the border area. In the past, all this area is uncovered. It's bare desert. So we have used the store squares. We use the store squares to first of all consolidate the movement of the sands, and then if we can fix the sand, and then we can grow the vegetation, bushes, trees inside those squares. So you have also installed the infrared cameras, and also you have the monitoring system. In southern area is the mountainous area. We have a district of Tianzhu, where we have captured the image of the snow leopard. With the appearance of the snow leopard, it means our ecosystem is growing better, the restoration is in progress, the whole environmental quality is building up. For the Wuwei city, previously you mentioned the Babusha forest area and also Tianzhu. Tianzhu is very close to the Qilian mountain. It's located between two deserts. And this site has played a very important role because it stopped the further extension of the two deserts. For every district, one unique mission. Let's look at this area. We have 4,000 square kilometers. In the 1950s, for example, in 1959, the whole river has dried up. But recently, we have made such effort so that the river has restored its vitality, and we have thicker coverage of the forests. This is a very typical example of restoration of ecosystem. If you can use one keyword to describe the challenge of ecological restoration, what is it? I think it's the greenery. We have this area of 380 kilometers to circle up the deserts, to stop the moving and extension of the deserts. With Liangzhou, we also have this band of greenery as long as 500 plus kilometers.
So for me, because I'm local people, so I think for me, water is key in this area. We must maximize the utilization efficiency of water resources here. And a lot of our viewers might be curious as to the water utilization methods of this place. And because we have seen an increasing precipitation volume this year, and let's have a closer look at the water utilization situation of the county through a short video clip. So for Minqing County, the biggest pressure would be regional comprehensive prevention and treatment, because you cannot address the problem with the power of one place or one county. You need to have this very unified project or plan in order to complete this very major task. This is a very big project. So it relies heavily on joint effort and synergy of the neighboring places. And as you mentioned, water resources are the key. So for water resources in Minqing, there are mainly three sources. The first one is natural river, and second would be irrigation projects. And the third one would be water from the reserves. So the water resources of the ecological restoration mainly come from the three sources that I mentioned. I think irrigation technology and project is the key. This is not only in Minqing County, but it's the same in other places as well. The 28 Przewalski horses that we transport this time is only part of the captured breeding species of Przewalski horses. So, is it possible for us to directly release the wild horses into the Hulenberg pasture land? Well, we would love to do so. However, the pasture, the Hulenberg pasture, is a very heavily farmed or places where there are already too many herds to overload the capacity. So we must protect the pasture before doing so. So for the staff of the animal, for the Endangered Animal Protection Center, they are quite nostalgic at this moment because they've been rearing the horses for such a long time. I think it happens every time before we release the wildlife into the wilderness. It's the same story when we release the wild camels into the nature. So after the introduction of the wild horse species, we actually did not have a lot of experiences rearing the horse. So a lot of the practice are generally self-developed. Is that right? Yes, but actually since 1986, we've been doing a lot of research. Of course, we have borrowed a lot of foreign experiences. However, rearing the wild horses in domestic environment is different from that the horses reared in the foreign environment. You cannot just directly borrow the experiences and techniques of foreign countries. But we believe that our research and practice has been proven quite successful, so we are very proud. Let me briefly introduce to you the history of this species. About 100 years ago, when the former Soviet Union was established in around 1918, when Lenin built this regime in 1924 to 25, when Lenin passed away, the Soviet government have signed the first protection order of wildlife. At that time, it was said that thousands of wild horses of the species under the protection of the Soviet government has become a really large herd. And in 1990s, when the Soviet regime broke out, a herd of around 2 million dropped sharply to around 40 to 50,000. That is quite a horrible situation for a species. So in Kazakhstan and Russia, there were this kind of contingency protection plan to save the species through methods such as this kind of capture breeding. But this species is quite special because it reacts ferociously, quite violently to external stimuli. Therefore, it still died in a very large quantity and very fast speed. Therefore, a lot of countries actually gave up the capture breeding of the horse. In European, a lot of countries have been rearing the horse for for several hundred years, such as in the UK, in Germany, and France. But now, not a lot of countries in Europe still keep this species. So, Wuwei Endangered Animal Protection Center began the rearing of the wild horse since 1988. We also have undergone a lot of twists and turns, but still we kept the species, and we now own a herd of around 170 horses. It is not a large herd, but it's not easy to achieve. On top of that, we will continue our research and exploration of the protection of the species. You have some other animals under protection in your center, right? You've mentioned the wild camels and wild donkeys. Yes. And you also have this kind of center to help with the endangered species. And altogether, we conduct protection of over 700 animal species that are living in the wilderness and on a pasture. Our final project is to protect the species before they are ready to be returned to the wilderness. I think the general objective of our protection center is to help with the harmonious coexistence between man and nature and man and wildlife. The wetland and the reserves are important natural habitat for the wildlife. Let's take a look. Thank you. And this would be the biggest artificial reservoir for water resources in Asia. So if you look from above, you can see that this reservoir is surrounded by two major deserts, including the Tengri Desert. And today we are very glad to have Director Liu of the reservoir with us. Hello, everyone. I'm Liu Zhaoqiang from the administrative office of the reservoir. So how big is this place? Well, this reservoir altogether has a floor space of 148 million square meters, and it faces two deserts, including the Tengri Desert. So the Hongyangshan Reservoir is situated in between the two deserts. So the total capacity of the reservoir, as you mentioned, is 148 million cubic meters. Where does all the water come from? Well, first of all, the water comes from the water transportation projects and from the two rivers, including the Xiying River and the Shiyang River. This is natural water injection. Thank you, Mr. Liu. I've also noticed that there are wild birds flying all over the place with different varieties, and we also see water ducks here. So how many animal species are there? Well, according to available statistics, there are around about 88 bird species, including crane and wild ducks. They would fly here to spend the winter and fly away in March, so they are mostly migrant birds. And each year we would transport about 30 million cubic meters of water to the lower stream. Let's take a look at the Qingshui Lake. This is Qingtu Lake. This is the water test center of the lake. This is a monitoring well of the research center. So there are already several monitoring spots around the lake in order to monitor the depths of the river. And on the screen, you could see the real-time statistics of the different wells around the lake. You can also see the volume of the streams. As you can see, this would be the underwater depths. This would be the change of the water, underwater depths through the years. As you can see, it has been deepened over the years due to due to our protection methods. We visited the Hongyashan Reservoir, and each year you would see the water reserve of this reservoir increasing in a healthy manner. As you can see, these are some contrasted pictures of before and after the treatment, water treatment of the wetland. So if you stand here by the lake, you could see a very harmonious picture of the coexistence between man and nature. This is the result of a comprehensive treatment of water, land, and sand. So, Mr. Kang, we rear the wild horses in the Qingtuhu Lake area. For what kind of reasons? Well, we aim to prepare the horses for the future release into the wilderness, because their natural environment is quite suitable for the rearing of the wild horses. So when we put the horses back into the protection center, are they used to it because their living environment seems to be shrinking with this movement? Well, it takes some adjustment at first because they've been living a natural habitat for such a long time. It takes some getting used to with the movement. But it went generally quite smoothly.
And they are still very comfortable in more or less a very normal status. Currently, we are driving on the highway. And with this high speed, traveling forward, these horses would not fight with each other. Otherwise, you would be stumble around inside the cabin of the truck. However, we have to pay attention during the break. When we stop the car and when we wait for a bit moment, we have to keep a close eye on these horses. But during the steady drive, it's no worry with the horses. This morning, before our live stream program, we have received the question list from our colleagues. We've been describing these Przewalski horses. We have 28 of them. We have 9, 9, 6, and 4. We are talking about this idea of the herd. So there's a question coming from our colleagues. Should we call it a family, or should we call it a group, or should we call it a herd? Different wording, because herd is a very big idea. For example, when we introduce the horses from foreign countries, it's like this whole big part of the animals, they could be considered as a whole herd. Let's listen to the professor. There are two types of structuring. First of all, with one stallion, with several few heads of mares, we call it the system of harem. For example, with one king, with his concubines, etc., it's a little bit like the harem system. The queen, of course, has a higher status than the concubines. And in that system of the harems, at the age of 2, they are sexually mature, whether it's for the female or the female. And when the foals reach the age of 2, they will be chased away from this family. And then we can also see a group of stallions. Imagine now we have a big number of horses. And it's not every one of the stallions they could form their own harems. That's why for the bachelors, they could also form a group of the bachelors. Inside that group of the bachelors, they will form their own ranking, and the status will be decided by their capability of fighting. If they can defeat the others, then you can be the king, you can be the number 1 of your own group of the bachelors. And sometimes we can see different rounds of the fights between the bachelors. They have a very strict structure of hierarchy, this ranking system. It's very useful to have this kind of behavior. For example, with the reproductive herd, for example, with that harem system with one stallion followed by several mares, they could keep their genetic information passing from one generation to another. And for the other offsprings, when they grow up until the age of 2, they will be sent away by their parents, and they will start to join the other groups, join the other families, and that is the exchange of the DNAs. And then in a new team, you can find 3 major elements. First kind is the stallion. The stallions that have lost their access to the original harem, they are chased away by the former kingdom. They have lost their kingdom, so they will be joining new families. Second type, those foals. those baby horses. And the third kind, after thousands of fights, after different rounds of fights, those horses can never win the others, and they cannot be the king. So for this new mixture of the horses, you can find the retired kings of the stallions and also the new ones, the foals. They are very young. And they can also fight with the retired horse kings so that they could also gain new experience with the fighting. It's not every one of the stallions could lead a kingdom, could build up their harem. You have to be very capable in fighting with the others. So we have those two groups. And for the herd, within a certain area with the possibility of exchange of DNA, we can call it a herd. We also have the bred herd. For example, in a certain area, we call it the herd of a certain region. Within a certain geographic space, if the DNA, the genetic resources could get exchanged, then we can call it a herd. For the critically endangered creatures, previously we have noticed not only the horses but also the wild donkeys of Mongolia. Previously, I mistook it as the baby horses, but it's not so. They are the donkeys. They have quite similar coat, but they are different species. For the Przewalski horses, could you please give us the traits or characteristics that could help us to distinguish one from the other? For first sight, the Przewalski's horses, they are stockily built. But the wild donkey of Mongolia, they are slimmer in size. And they look very energetic. And then we can also look at the mane on the back of these Przewalski's horses. With the Przewalski's horses, their mane stands erect and will not extend forward. The legs for the Przewalski's horses are usually black ones, but the color would differ with the wild donkeys of Mongolia. We now have very close images of the Przewalski's horses. Usually in nature, we cannot run into these kind of wild horses. Today, we're about to reintroduce the Przewalski's horses into the Dunhuang Westlake National Natural Reserve. From the bird's eye view, you would think that it's like an oasis hidden in a Gobi desert. Does it help to the growing up of the Przewalski's horses in nature? Since most of our viewers, they are not experts of the horses, so very briefly I will give you explanation. If you consider the biological geography, this whole area is desert. And for the desert, we can also do classification. For example, the desert with the sand, desert with the Gobi type, or with the loess, etc. Different types of deserts. But in general, they have very limited rainfall and very scarce vegetation coverage. And inside this desert area, sometimes you can find the rivers or sometimes the lakes. And these rivers and lakes can nourish the vegetation. And gradually they can form an oasis. Those are so-called hidden oases inside the desert. You can imagine we can find the greenery, for example, the grass, to nourish the horses. We have this hidden environment. In the vast desert, it's quite obvious we have most of the areas deserted, but inside this mostly deserted area, we also have the hidden small environment. For example, the Dunhuang Westlake National Nature Reserve is a kind of hidden oasis inside of a mostly obvious deserted area. Dunhuang in history is an area that is extremely dry with the yearly precipitation of less than 300 mm. But nearby, we also have the Qilian Mountain, which is the origin of the river, and the river runs by, creating those hidden oases. This explains why we could still nourish these wild horses in nature, because the hidden oasis can bring the grass and food intake for the horses. So these horses, they can live either on the steppe in Asia or in the hidden oasis inside the deserted area. The Western explorer has discovered the Przewalski's horses in the past. In the western part of China and also in the Mongolia, we have discovered the few numbers of the Przewalski's horses. Today, some people say that these wild horses could go into the desert, but it's not 100% correct expression. They can temporarily go into the hidden oasis of these mostly deserted area. Today, we are doing this reintroduction of the Przewalski's horses into the wild. We are kicking off a new journey to bring these Przewalski's horses into this hidden oasis in the desert, and finally we would like to send them back to the steppe. Maybe one day in the future, they could be living on a vast grassland. And for the Przewalski's horses, this species has already witnessed different stages of degradation of environment. Later on, if we have enough time, I would share more details with all of you. For this hidden oasis, or for the other professional terminologies, previously I have already invited our colleague Ma Li to prepare some footages. Maybe our colleague could show you more details about this hidden oasis inside the desert. Hello everyone, my name is Ma Li. I'm standing now in the Dunhuang Westlake National Nature Reserve, one of the destinations for the reintroduction into the nature for our Przewalski's horses. What will be the new habitat for our horses, and what is the current status of the grass and water for our Przewalski's horses? Today, we have invited one important person in charge for this return program for the Przewalski's horses. Hello, everyone. I work in the Dunhuang Westlake National Nature Reserve. My name is Wang Long. I'm also the person in charge for the Dunhuang station for this reintroduction program for the Przewalski's horse. This time, we're about to bring the Przewalski's horses back to the nature. It's the third time in 3 years in a row. And this was also one of the top priorities for our site. Why you have selected this area, the Dunhuang Westlake Natural Reserve, as the destination? Starting by 2007, we have launched this reintroduction program of Przewalski's horses back to nature. We have collected a lot of data, and after the comparison, we noticed that in Dunhuang Westlake Nature Reserve, we have abundant water resources, sufficient vegetation as the food intake for the horses. It's the wonderful habitat for the daily living of the Przewalski's horses. First of all, you have mentioned the landscape. Here, we have a very large area dedicated to the Dunhuang Westlake Nature Reserve. We have 600,000 square kilometers. And to this side is the northeastern part of this nature reserve. This area, we have abundant resources of the grass. One of the spots for the release of our Przewalski's horses, we call it the bigger Mamitu. Here we have thicker coverage of the vegetation. So once released into the wild, the Przewalski's horses could be easily adapted to the ground because they can find sufficient food supply. Now, what do we have as the vegetation? And which of them could be the preferred diet for the Przewalski's horses? For example, this is a kind of the diet source. Here we also have the reeds, especially the new leaves of the reeds. And those reeds, they reach a certain height. Yes, they have very high stems. The water level, especially the level of the underground water, will also decide the total height of the vegetation, for example, with the reeds. Here we have a lower altitude, less than 900 meters. What kind of landscape do you have? It's higher to the east and lower in the west. And it's like a valley. In the middle, we have more vegetation. The horses would be traveling around in this area. Here in the Westlake Nature Reserve. Why this name? It's one of the terminal ends of the Shule River. During a certain period of time, this river has dried up. In order to protect this oasis, we have taken actions to restore the water. So it's very important for this Dunhuang Westlake National Nature Reserve. This is very close to one of the deserts here. In 2015, we have kicked off an engineering project to guarantee the underground water level for the ecological use, and also to stop the eastward extension of the desert. Final goal is to protect this natural reserve and a hidden oasis inside the Gobi Desert.
So this is the value of the Dunhuang Wetland Protection Center, and that's why it has become an important carrier for the reintroduction of the wildlife, such as the Przewalski's horse. In 2020, since 2020, it has become a very ideal place for the release of the reintroduction of the Przewalski horse wildlife, including the horse. And you've set up some drinking spot, like such as this. This is automated artificial drinking location for the wildlife. So each day we would release water into this drinking location. So in summer, we release the water 3 times a day. In winter, it was 2 times a day in order to make sure that the wild horses would have enough drinking water. We set up this kind of artificial drinking location because with the lowering of some of the underwater level, some of the natural wells are exhausted. So we have to set up artificially the drinking location so as to make sure that the horses would have enough water intake. Mostly, we set up the drinking spot where the wildlife are mainly located. So we follow their movement pattern and set up the location so that the horses would find it easier to get to the drinking spot or location. So on the route, although this is the very remote area, we still set up these PV models as the power supplier of the natural reserve and our protection center. This is quite a big area, so we need power supply. That's why we set up these PV models as sources of power generation. So all of the water supply inside the natural reserve depends on these PV models. We have also set up these signal towers because we now have power supply, these PV models. So these watchtowers can also observe the movement of the horses so that we would know where they are in a more timely fashion. So if there's an emergency, we could locate the horses timely, and we could also conduct rescue mission if necessary. So these signal or watchtower are equipped with cameras to monitor the movement of the horses so that the professionals can provide timely assistance if needed. Because this reservoir is quite big, the total space is about 61 hectares. So we need to rely on these watchtowers to know the location, to get a better picture of the location of the horses. So this is an important part for the IT application of the protection area or the reservation park. Without the application of such technologies, it will be very hard for us to monitor the natural environment, including the wildlife and natural resources such as water and land. Therefore, it is important for us to equip ourselves with the IT. It will ease the burden for the professionals and will make it easier for the staff to do their work well. As you mentioned, there are a lot of work for you to do, including the setup for the drinking location and also the building for the watchtowers and the setup of the PV models. These are all part of the IT technology application of the reservoir, of the reserve. Thank you. Now we've understand better about the reserve and also the possible new home for the wild horses. The vegetation here is ideal for the wild horses to inhabit. And also in the future, after the reintroduction of the horses, I'm sure that they will find this place ideal for them to live in. We still see some salinated land. How will they affect the drinking water for the horses? Well, these salinated water may be unsuitable for humans to drink, but they will actually have positive effects on the Przewalski horse because some intake of salty water will help them to build their physique. They will become stronger if drinking this mildly salted water. So the water, the vegetation, and environment is ideal for the horses. So let's talk about the neighbors of the horses, because in the past several years, we have already released several herds, 2 herds of Przewalski horse. What are their status quo? Are they still in this area? Well, in 2023 and 24, we've introduced altogether about 24 wild horses into this area. They actually move here gradually. But they belong to different herds, so will they fight with each other? I mean, with the newcomers? Well, actually, no. Because their living location is quite far apart from each other, at least 20 to 30 kilometers away. So they won't have any conflict. So we have different locations for the reintroduction of the Przewalski horses. All of these places have very good natural habitat, natural environment for the horses, including the vegetation and water resources, so that there won't be any conflicts between the herds concerning living space and resources. So were all the horses released at once living together, or as smaller families or units? Well, according to our observation, after the reintroduction, mostly the horses will still live as a herd, but they will probably break into different smaller groups, smaller herds, and then they would reproduce and become new herds. And that's how this whole species would develop and increase in numbers. Thank you. So the reason why we release different herds of horses into different locations is also another way to increase the numbers, to expand the species and expand the herds. That's right. For the horses, it will take them 7 to 10 years for them to mature, and in which they would undergo some genetic changes. They would also have some genetic exchanges in the reproduction phase. Thank you. For humans, it is quite a harsh environment to survive, but this wild area is ideal for the Przewalski horses to exist and reproduce. That's why we choose this location for reintroduction. Our horses will arrive here soon. We will give you some follow-up report later. Thank you. We would like to also tell our viewers is that the horses need to get used to the environment, and so do our crew, because this is basically a no man's land. So it will be very difficult for us to get power supply. So we need to overcome a lot of difficulties in the process of live streaming. You might also have noticed that we might have some signal braking. And this vehicle, as you can see, is not very comfortable as well. This is also due to the limitation of the natural condition. We have very limited space. So how fast are we driving? Well, about 80 kilometers per hour. We can't drive too fast or too slow because we have to consider the situation of the horses. We can't drive too fast because we have to avoid this kind of sudden or abrupt braking because it might startle the horses. We are already out of the Wuwei city. So now let's talk about the entire Hexi Corridor area. You can also tell us more about, the history, natural resources, or even the scenic spot or the tourism resources of this place. We know that there are several grottos, including the Tianjishan grottos. And in Dunhuang, of course, the world-famous Mogao caves. So the Hexi Corridor locates west to the Yellow River. And the southern part would be the Qilian Mountain. The southern part is Qilianshan Mountains. And in Jiuquan, there's this Madang Mountains. That's why it is called the corridor. It is surrounded by many mountains. We have also had a lot of painstaking efforts in the natural ecological protection in Qilianshan Mountains. Well, the local government actually attaches great importance to the ecological protection of the Qilianshan Mountains. Including the water resources problem of this area. And to address the water supply, a hydropower station was also constructed here to address the problem. Especially to make sure that the downstream would have enough water supply for it to sustain a hospitable natural environment. We need to better protect the natural environment. And we also need to make sure that we can take full use of the melted ice water coming down from the top of the mountains. So through our effort and also the improvement of the natural environment, we could see that the ecological condition of the Qilianshan mountainous area has improved over the years.
Among the 18 counties, we are the only one that has reached the highest level of the restoration of water quality in the rivers. So in resume, you have, first of all, remanaged the waterworks, and second, protect the creatures in nature. You have also improved the daily livelihood of the people. You have also restored the local vegetation in the ecosystem. You have also reconsidered the touristic programs. You have managed the mining programs on the grass farms. You have also taken efforts. For example, for the district of Liangzhou, they have also managed one part called Nanshan. They have planted new trees, and also they have the forest for the carbon sink used for the carbon transaction. So by planting trees, we have not only the benefits to the side of ecology, but also to the side of economy. We have economic forest to generate profits for the local people. And in the meantime, it's also a means to improve the quality of the environment. And the total area has recognized the improvement non-stop with the ecosystem. For example, previously you mentioned the snowy leopards have reappeared in this area, a symbol that the environment has been better than the past. Previously, you kept some information with you. Now, maybe you can share those information with us. It's a great pleasure for me to travel with both of you along the Hexi Corridor. And we are also traveling through this road of horses. I'm a native to the northwestern part of China. I feel very dear to this Hexi Corridor. Maybe compared to the official by my side, I don't know this area as deeply as you, but I could share part of the history with you. For example, in the past, in this area, we have so many nomadic people. They live around, and they have also depended on the horses for the transportation of merchandises because they also do business. It's a road of civilization. And in the old days, one of the greatest representative of our material civilization is the silk. And in the old days, the horses, the wild ones in Europe have gone extinct. And then the Przewalski's horses have survived. We have considered those two types of wild horses in the world. Previously, one expert has studied that the European wild horses and Przewalski horses, they come from the same strain, but they are two subspecies. And for today's domestic horses, in history, they have inherited some of the DNA or genetic resources from the previous Przewalski's horses. But still, we can have some doubts on that conclusion. But at least we can say that today's domestic horses, they are kind of a cousin to the Przewalski's horses, and they are like the vector to carry on and on the civilization of this part of the world along the Hexi Corridor. It has a great significance for the history. We have been an ancient civilization. We have so many beautiful artifacts like the tea, the porcelain, and the silk. We also have the 4 great inventions that have changed the total course of human beings' history. This is the contribution of the Chinese population to the whole world. And we have also formed this road that we are traveling on today. We have also kept the animals like the sheep, the horses. We have also cultivated plants, agricultural products like the wheat, chestnut, etc. Many of these plants have been introduced through this corridor, and some other products introduced through the maritime Silk Road have carried the word meaning foreign in Chinese language. So in history, the Hexi Corridor has played a very important role in the development of civilization here in this land. Here I have a small proposal for our dear viewers. If you have some time, maybe you can consider driving around this old Silk Road and also the Hexi Corridor. You will find out countless historic sites which would help you to better understand the course of history in China. Then you can have your personal experience. You can also take your kids with you. So I believe that later when they grow up, they will not have such a headache with the history lesson. And along the Hexi Corridor, people also offer delicious food. Until today, I've never heard a complaint about the food here. All I heard about is compliments about the food here. This is also the place of cultural interaction. It's like a crossroad of culture. For example, the connection of Eastern and Western culture, and also the mixture of Tibetan culture with the England culture. We have the communication between the East and West and the North and the South. Here we also have a belt of oases with enriched history. Only by taking your time, only by visiting this area by yourself, can you have the true experience in this area. If you just pass by very quickly, then you cannot tell the beauty of this area. You will feel like it's a plain countryside area, very boring. But actually, you have to take time to have some personal exploration. Because I noticed that by one end of the Hexi Corridor is the Mogao Cave. Mogao Cave is so famous, not only in China but also to the whole world. If you travel along the Hexi Corridor, you can arrive directly at the Mogao. Usually people will take the direct flight to visit. the croissant spring and also the cave of the Mogao. People will miss this part of the Hexi Corridor, but I think it's worth it. With this distance of 200 to 300 kilometers, in the ancient days, people would use the horses to travel this long distance. Every day, the horses have to finish this distance, and by the end of each day, people have to take a rest. That's why from one place to another, you can find those old sites of hotels. If you travel around here, you would understand how enriched our history has been. This is my personal feelings about the trip here, and that's why I'd like to propose this trip to all of you. If you come by, you will understand my words now. Some people would think this is a barren land, but by standing on the spot, we would recall the long history, like thousands of years ago. History has taken place here. It's a quite curious feeling, and the Hexi Corridor has also deeply changed. It's a reflection of the human development. Today, the industries have also developed here. In the past, it's a road of horses, because in the past, only means of transportation is by the horse. And then we have the oasis. Oasis help the towns to grow. With the water supply, there is also commercial activities, and we also have the original hotels and not the mailing stations. In the Qilian mountain area, we also have the rivers. During the days of the Wu Emperor of the Han Dynasty, he has also created those spots of connection. In the history textbooks, we read like, on the road we have countless merchants and messengers. It's a very crowded area as the Hexi Corridor. Of course, in old days, we have these travelings by the businessmen, but today we have the pipeline network for the transmission of the gas and oil. We also have the longest stretches of highway from the west to the east. For this area of the Hexi Corridor, we have built up more functions, more signification. It's a new version of crossroads with the communication of goods and people and culture. Because, sir, you come from the Gansu province. Imagine now, in the upcoming National Day holiday, people would like to travel to your province. In the Hexi Corridor, what kind of cultural sites or natural scenery would you like to recommend? The most impressive one. For example, the steppe, the large steppes. We also have the river of Bingo. Very soon it will become the top-level tourist site. Over there, the temperature is very comfortable. Even you come to this river by summer, you will not be suffering from the high temperature. And we also have the caves with the sculptures, very well-developed sculpture techniques represented with the caves in the Qilian mountain area. This has also influenced the carving technique in the Yungang cave. This time we're about to reintroduce the wild horses into the nature. Later on, we're about to invite our visitors to the Dunhuang Westlake National Nature Reserve to appreciate the Przewalski's horses. You're always welcome to discuss with us about the Przewalski's horses. Through the Hexi Corridor, we can visit Zhangye City. Over there, we have a very famous temple. And of course, at Dunhuang, you will see the frescoes, the caves, the sculptures. And the style of scenery is quite different from that located in the southern part of China. It's an open and vast land. Here, the nature would give you a total different feeling. And you will feel relieved here. You can see the grassland scenery and forest in the Qilian mountain area. If we look out the window, the landscape has totally changed compared to the departure point. From east to west, we have a reducing level of precipitation. For example, in China, in southeastern area, we have the monsoon climate. And here, because we are by the Tibetan Plateau, we have the Eastern Asia monsoon climate. In China, the more you move towards the southeastern area, the more rainfall can you see. For example, even up to 3,000 mm per year. And here, if you move to the northwestern area, you will see smaller amount of rainfall. Even in the poems written by our ancestors, you will see that monsoon will not reach the other side of the mountain because it's fully blocked. And the Tibetan Plateau is considered as the third peak of the world. And the underground water has nourished the oasis. Today we have modernized the cities and very well-developed agricultural sector. And here in Oasis, we also have great agriculture. Here we have the natural spring and sufficient sunshine. The animal products and agricultural products are all in wonderful products. The taste is impeccable. If you come to visit this area, you will understand what I'm talking about. We also have special structure of the creatures here. Nature and society is coexisting harmoniously. especially for those young students in elementary school and also in middle school. If they come to this region, they would understand the text from their textbooks. If you travel from the east to the west, if you don't take the high-speed railway, if you drive by yourselves, during one long section, you will find the parallel roads. And by the foot of the Qilian mountain, you can see the large trucks, very busy in transporting the merchandises.
Including the cotton coal from Xinjiang. And also, in the reverse direction, the commodity from the other provinces to the Hormuz Pass and then on to the Middle Asia. So this is like the continental expressway, and you might only see wilderness. However, this place is actually quite vivid and it's quite prosperous, especially in history. And we see the development of this region in the past years with the West Development Project. So for a lot of people, you see the wilderness, you see the mountains, you see the grassland, the pasture, the ocean even. You don't seem to see anything at first glance. However, if you look closer, you might find that this place is quite lively because it's home to many plants, animals, vegetations. Some of them, for example, some of the animal species will only appear at night. If you look closer, you may find the beauty, the true beauty of the wilderness. A lot of the species can tolerate very harsh environment that humans cannot endure, such as salinated land or very arid land. So we need to pay respect to these species. We need to understand them. We need to better protect them. These are very important genetic resources of our globe. So the Hexi Corridor area is such a vault, a natural vault for us, because it accommodates various kinds of natural resources and plants and animals. So this corridor, as you mentioned, is a vault that accommodates natural resources, including this cultural heritages. This, for example, is a historical relic. It is the remains of the ancient wall. This is part of the ancient Great Wall. So, when you see the horse, when you see the Great Wall, it can also remind you of the horses, because the construction of the Great Wall aims at defense of the rival of the cavalries. who, live and fight on horsebacks. So the Great Walls were constructed by the central China's regime as part of the national or state defense against the nomads who live on horsebacks. That's why we have to, everything is connected. When you see the Great Wall, you could also think about, be reminded of the horses. There are a lot of different natural factors in the Hexi Corridor. We in China have a very diverse landscape and geological conditions, such as the desert, the plateau, and wetland. And you can find different creatures, different species that will call different places home. Different species can adapt themselves to different environment. And there are also species living in different altitude. The snow mountain, for example, which are mostly found in high altitude and low temperature. So despite the low temperature, you still could find various kinds of animal species living there. You could also find yak, for example, the wild yak and the wild camels in these no man's land, in this very harsh natural environment. So what should we do if we want to observe better the environment? Hello everyone, I am in Gansu province, and here you could find a lot of very diverse natural environment, such as the snow mountain, a pasture, and wetland. In the wetland, there is a large number of bird folks. To protect the bird species and folks, there are also professionals who are working here. Let us talk to one of the professionals here. These are mostly water birds. What are there? Well, there are the cranes and wild ducks. And you can see that some of them are carrying cups with them. They call this place home. This would be their living habitat. You could see the feces of the water birds. You could actually tell what birds are there, from the feces. And you can see this is a feather of the water birds. So the total space of the wetland is 180,000 square meters. The total number of birds here exceeds 1 million. You could even see the blackneck cranes over there. with an increasing with an improvement of the natural environment, the number of the water birds are also increasing by the year. The migrant birds would fly here mostly in March and will spend about 7 months here in their reproduction season. So about a month later, they will fly away from this place and spend winter elsewhere, and they will fly back in March. But sometimes their eggs might also be, stolen by other predators, such as the fox or eagles. I think the black-neck cranes are quite an elegant species, aren't they? That's right. They are very tall with a long neck and they walk elegantly. So if tourists want to come here to observe the cranes, what suggestion do you have for them? I think it is okay for you to come here to observe, but do not interrupt them because it is their reproductive season. If you want to observe them, please do that from a distance. Do not come too close. This is a very beautiful feather. I like to take this feather home. So if it's possible, you could come here to observe the water birds. It must be a very precious experience for you. Just now we took a look of the Yanshi Bay, another very important wetland in Gansu. I'm sure that that Yanshi Bay is a very important habitat, especially for the migrant birds. So when setting up the natural reserve, do you think that we should set the places far away from the farmlands because the domestic reared horses, or other animals might interfere with the wildlife or even disrupt the genetic resources of the wild animals? That's true. That's a very important consideration concerning the protection of wildlife. Because within a certain space, there is only limited natural resources for the animals to share. Therefore, if this place also accommodates or includes a farmland and other agricultural area, the wildlife might come in conflict with the domestically reared animals. And another important factor is, of course, the genetic purity of the wildlife. So if the wildlife, such as the wild horses, mate with the domestically reared horses, it might disrupt their genetic code, their genetic reserves, and a hybrid is born, which would consider a genetic interference of the wildlife. Fortunately, in the West Lake area in Gansu province, this place is considered treated as a purely natural habitat with no human interference or agricultural or pasturing activities.
整个我们的这次不是野马转运的这个时间啊，就还是有回到那句话，整体来讲其实是不太好把握的，因为根据这个马的状态，因为作为国家濒危一级保护动物，我们一定要对这个马的安全负责。
In this reintroduction activity, it is important for us to make sure that this very precious wild species is safe and they can adapt to the natural environment smoothly, so that this transportation process is very important. As the commander of this mission, what do you think that we should pay attention to? Well, in the transportation process,
假设说您来做的话，您会着重考虑哪几个因素呢？
你是说从装车开始是吧？
You mean the whole process? Yes. There are several things that we need to pay attention to in the whole process.
怎么安全的装上车？这个现在我们已经探索出来了哈。这个我们用这个挖斜
We need to first of all set up a ramp to direct the horses onto the vehicle. And secondly, on the route, we need to maintain a proper speed so as to ensure the safety. We also have been working with Public Security Authority to ensure the safety of the transportation along the way. We also need to determine the resting locations. Well, because the journey will take several days, you must set up a proper location for the men and the horses to take a break, to drink some water. And currently speaking, the process has been quite smoothly due to our prior preparation. And the final step after transportation would, of course, be the release or the reintroduction into the wilderness. It concerns the competition for living space with the original population. After the reintroduction, winter is coming. So for the horses to better survive the winter, they need to form folks. They need to form the herds as soon as possible after the introduction. So autumn would be an ideal season for them to form herds, for them to find companions to spend the winter together, so that they can welcome the mating season in spring.
那直接就造成了已有的马进来的马，这个直接从马群。
So this kind of smooth transition is important. If there are fierce conflicts between the horses with the original residents or wildlife, it might endanger the species or hinder their existence and survival, and even the coming mating season.
那我们好的，我们现在手段是非常先进的。现在你看啊，前面的马有卫星项圈，这匹马过去以后，我们这无
When
人机。
this horse goes over there, we have a drone and also the patrolling team to keep an eye on it. We have to do a good monitoring job. From the beginning of our journey, we paid a lot of attention to the bulk shipment of our horses so that they will not fight with each other during the trip.
长城是一直在持续。
As far as we go, we can see
想到马没有？
对，所以现在大家有一个
the Great Wall. And when we look at the Great Wall by our side,
游牧文明跟这个农耕文明的
we will immediately recall the horses
说到这个，
and also the blending of the culture.
是不是现在这个车
At what speeds do we run?
还是把
It's 80
我们整场自从上了高速之后，
kilometers per hour. We are driving at a very steady speed.
有一点小颠簸，可能是
Except during a few moments, we have encountered some bumps in the road.
刹车，也就是
We are not braking suddenly, and we are driving forward very steadily. The speed is also a key during the shipment of the horses. Because we are using this artery road, where we can find not only the small vehicles but also the large trucks.
他视野啊，那么随便看着很多，或者他就看到有些周围过。
We also have to block a little bit the vision of the Przewalski's horses. If there's no obstacle at all inside this vision, sometimes they will have fears at the sight of the other vehicles or strange objects. And we also have to guarantee the flow of the air. This time we have used the bulk shipment method for the Przewalski's horses. We have made 3 innovations for the reintroduction program of the Przewalski's horses. One of the innovation is this bulk shipment. Now we heard an announcement. We're about to enter a reconstruction section of the road, and we will be driving along with the large trucks, which means that for our fleet of the vehicles, we have to stay vigilant. We also have to queue. We have to stay in a very good formation. And we should help out each other, share the message, take the actions together. If we travel separately, then we have to confront with all those tests and challenges all alone. Now our live stream program is going on. If you have any questions about the Przewalski's horses, or if you are curious about ecological preservation and the protection of animals about the province of Gansu, or you have the intention to visit the Dunhuang Museum, or if you want to come to have a short-term visit during the National Day holiday, we have invited experts here by my side, so please don't hesitate if you have any questions. Maybe I could set an example for you. I have a question for our expert. Luckily, late in the night or earlier tomorrow morning, we can get our horses by the destination. And we already have the other horses in the nature. For the newly arrived Przewalski's horses, if they want to get mated, do they have a less advantaged status compared to the local horses? Today, we have already put these Przewalski's horses in the training program for some time. I don't believe that all of them would have disadvantages to find a mating partner. Maybe in the beginning they would have some difficulties, but I think they will not give up. Someday or sometime in the near future, they would find their mating partner because it's due to the need to survive. First of all, they have to make an observation. It's just like our sweeping machine at home. Before starting the floor sweeping job, the robot would first of all develop this map in their control system. And for the Przewalski's horses, upon arrival, they will also do this mapping job. They will have the exploration. After arriving at a new spot, just like the other creatures, they will start the exploration. They will explore towards different directions, and to each of the directions, they will not go very far in distance. Otherwise, they will be chased by the other creatures. So this is a process of understanding of the environment. Finally, they will select a preferred site and gradually build up their kingdom. And the key element here in the choice and selection of the site is the water. In this dry land, water is the #1 strategic resources for them.
不是野马进去以后啊，一到地点啊，他需要干的事儿。
So upon arrival at a new site, first thing is to look for water.
我们最终你看，我们从2023年开始，
From 2023 until now, first of all, it's the Dunhuang Westlake Nature Reserve has completed a reintroduction into the wild by themselves.
最终放归到大小马鸣兔是自己的这个马内部放一下。2024
They reintroduced the horses to the Mamitu area,
荒漠保护区的马又拉到这个东
and then we have reintroduced the wild horses from another place to the Dunhuang Nature Reserve.
咱的这个西湖，最终是我们要把西湖要打造
And finally, what is the ultimate vision for the development of the West Lake Nature Reserve? Why do we have to put all the wild horses to the Xihu Nature Reserve?
建立野生种群嘛，最合适的一个地方。
We think it is the most suitable place to develop this natural herd with sufficient water resources and grass. But of course, you have this alkali land and salty land.
应该要好好的
We have to do an estimation of the local conditions.
对我们广大区到底
In the
承载
wetland of Dunhuang, we have to give an estimated number of the total size of the wild horses that could be
这个马的主群是上不
accepted by nature.
已经到了这个
It should not
就要制约
go beyond the limit of the nature.
马迷兔，还要向更远
For example, you can move some of the herds to the Mamitu region and some to other areas because the current reintroduction program will not be the last one.
超大小马迷兔的区域，
We will further extend
外的这些马
the habitable area for our wild horses within the limits of the environment.
我看到我们这个其中一个
Because the bigger the number we could reintroduce into the nature, the better.
或者说是咱是目标是这样，最终的目的是要把东王亚打。
So, what is the ultimate goal for the development of this Westlake Nature Reserve? Across the world, we share the same problem for the reintroduction of the Przewalski's horses into nature. Is the competition between natural creatures, natural animals with the local agricultural production.
东方国家第三代
First of all, it's lucky for us to have such a large area of land inside the Westlake
可是野马之所以
Nature Reserve. As is mentioned before, it's a hidden oasis inside the desert.
就是因为有这些
The reason why these Przewalski's horses could survive on this land is because we have this hidden oasis.
湿地，你想在敦煌湿地你是能看到海鸥的，
Even
能看到海鸥的，
even you can find the seagulls in the Dunhuang wetland.
把那个
It's hard to imagine.
鹅后连各种这个适应荒漠环境的动物，实际上我们湿地有海鸥。
We can easily imagine there are animals that are already adapted to the desert environment, but even seagulls could be found.
生活在湿地环境
Because we have a wetland,
显域物种，周在那个荒漠环境那叫显域物种。
and those are less obvious creatures
那坐在这儿的话，
supported by the hidden oasis.
冲突哈没有，我们的空间环境又足够大，
In this area, we have sufficient space,
相当
which allows the Przewalski's horses to develop their natural herd.
我们历练它这个
And in nature, they can have some exercises to build up their own capabilities to live alone in nature.
这样的好的草原，也给野马
The steppe is also another supportive factor.
过去的话，你想想，那有什么困难啊？但是你得有地方拿呀。那我们西湖得
The Dunhuang Westlake Natural Reserve
我们自己要保存野马，我们为将来
can not only keep the herds
要
currently,
提供
but also offer
这个我们的
the germplasm for the future development.
留的捕食野马。
we would like to turn this area one of the best reintroduction sites for the Przewalski's horses. We have to try to be the best. So that we can guarantee a successful reintroduction of the Przewalski's horses into the nature. For the Mamitu area, do we find over there the natural enemies to the Przewalski's horses? Maybe smaller creatures, smaller in size but very ferocious ones that would attack the Przewalski's horses, for example, the wolves. Yes, we can find the wolves in the Westlake wetlands. Of course, they are natural enemies to the Przewalski's horses, especially to the foals. But according to our practices in the previous years, there have been the attacks carried out against the foals and also the pregnant mares. But the wild horses, they could also fight. They're very good at fighting, even inside the herd. The Przewalski's horses can fight against each other. They can use their legs to kick and to attack. And also the king horse should also play its role. To sum up what we have talked about, there are 3 innovations for the reintroduction. The first one is the bulk shipment. The second is to develop the natural herd in the hidden oasis. We are the only one, and we have also the top-level practices. After the reintroduction of the horses into the nature, still the road is quite long. We have so many other tasks to accomplish. For example, we have to observe how these herds are developing, how the families are created. Inside the herd, there are 2 key roles. One is the king, and another is the queen horse.
So for the wild horses, it's difficult to tell whether it is a stallion or a mare from the experience. But when they form a herd, you could tell the gender of the horse from the location of the horse. For example, the king or the stallion, the leading stallion, a stallion will be in charge of like group defense, and the leading mare, the female horse, will be in charge of be on guard, to be like the person who watch out for dangers for the herd. And the third point of area of innovation is that we have reared the herd into a herd that do not need to depend on human artificial feed. They could look for or seek food sources and water sources on their own. So they are completely self-dependent when it comes to searching for water and food resources. So this kind of capture breeding method is quite special because they do not need to rely on food or feed provided by humans. I think today must be very special for the professionals working in the protection center, right? It's like sending your kids to college. You are, sad and excited at the same time. That's true, but we are quite confident of the surviving ability of the wild horses, because today is the day that they set up into the wilderness and they truly become themselves. And I'm sure that their herd will become stronger and bigger as time goes by after setting them free into the wilderness. And I think the animal protection center of yours also develop with an introduction of the horses. You visited places like Xinjiang and of course Gansu and the Inner Mongolia and Ningxia as well. And the horses of different places are quite distinct from each other because they belong to different species, different herds, so they may behave differently from one another despite the fact that they are all horses. I think the biggest wild herds of horses are found in Xinjiang autonomous region, right? That's true. In Xinjiang, there are a very large herd of about 40 wild horse, and in Gansu and Dunhuang, we now adds up to more than 200. So in the semi-arid land in Xinjiang autonomous region, what surprised me and most of you, I'm sure, is that in these arid and semi-arid land, the ancient Chinese have shown amazing wisdom concerning the protection of the horses. In such places, they rely on waterways for transportation. For example, you must know the Hetianyu, which is a kind of naturally produced jade. When this jade is unearthed, they are actually transported into the inland area through waterways. This is based on my own research, of course. Today we travel all the way to the west, and the destination would be around the Yumenguan Pass of the ancient Great Wall. And the protection station there is actually called the Yumenguan or Yumen Pass,
据我了解到，就是我
a protection station.
整个预案是
So our plan
12点左右下东黄西收费站。
啊，
所以说，确实今天这一路向西穿越河西走廊的这个是一个漫漫的一个
is one that covers quite a long distance.
这个马也
I think it is not easy for all of us,
还必须
you know,
所以这个
men and horses included.
管湖站啊，大家如果你这个去这个到罗布泊、去雅丹迪嘛，你一定会看到这个管湖站的啊。今天我们野马就到那儿啊。这个
So that is our destination today, the Yumenguan Protection Center.
到了去看玉门关这个汉长城
If you have an opportunity to visit this place, you can take a look at the ancient Great Wall of the Han Dynasty. But do not forget that there is a animal protection center, and also you could possibly find Przewalski horses there.
西湖湿地呀，在这种极端荒漠中啊，你看成片的芦苇荡啊。
In the semi-arid and arid land, you could still see a lot of vegetation
这个这样一片绿洲，
over there.
你和周围环境这种反差，你比较一下啊，你也可以
These plants and trees could survive in very harsh environment.
这个力量啊，看看我们野马
If you could see all that, you could experience firsthand the power of nature, and also you could feel, how difficult it is for our the animal protectors, for the professionals, to conduct and complete their work there.
尤其是2023年的时候，就记得当时道路
In 2023, when the first group of horses were reintroduced,
包括他们自己吃的一些蔬菜，都是自己保护管湖站内部来种的。因为整个玉门关保护站离东华市区有
the working environment for the
所以好多的这个
protection center is quite harsh. They actually have to rely on the vegetables that they grow on their own.
一些我们的一些观测设备，就比如说是一些
Some of them even need to lit up fire to cook because they need to save the power that is generated by the PV panels for the operation of the equipment within the protection zone.
我们现在就是保护生态环境
So the local workers and professionals really have sacrificed a lot,
对这个体会也更深，
and
是吧？
it's hard for us to imagine the hardship that they've endured over the years.
首要因素就是人嘛，是吧？
Yes, because human is an important resources as well in the effort, and they are actually the first and foremost important in this effort.
今天的话，我们这个人的这个因素，我觉得精神都挺饱满啊。
But
在无论
I'm sure that all of the professionals are doing this with, the highest enthusiasm and the highest standard,
也非常热爱这项事业啊。
highest standard
这是一块来报道的，咱们央视的
of,
康军我们
perseverance.
受到鼓舞，是不是啊？我们这
And also you guys, the crew and reporter from CCTV are also doing your work so well, despite the harsh environment. However, I must say that the working condition for the local
改善了相当多。
experts have improved by a large margin compared to past years. we still have a lot of room for improvement, but we see great prospect in the future. We need to take one step after another. What I want to tell our viewers is that there are already 4 provinces that become the new habitat for the wild horses. So this kind of wilderness training process of the horses have been proven quite successful. We already have set up this standard, which is compiled by the 4 provinces together. That is called the brochure or the protection plan for the wilderness training of the Przewalski horses. Thank you for that introduction. Let's take a look at where we are right now. We are now close to Zhangye City, and we are now at Shandan County. What reminds you? What's the first thing that comes up to your mind when mentioning Shandan? Well, I could think of the Shandan military horse pasture, or which are actually mentioned in the primary school's textbooks. In China, there are a lot of military horse fields, especially in the remote areas, such as in the north and the west. So I was very curious about this place since I was a teenager, or since I was very young. Our live streaming is coming to an end for today. We talk about the Przewalski's horse, we talk about the Hexi Corridor, and also all of the geological environment condition, and also the protection methods by the local professionals and the government. We have also covered the changes over the past years. So it's like a time and space transcending journey. Our goal is to introduce this very precious species to our viewers, and so as to call for better protection of the species. Now we've already arrived Shandan after setting up from Wuwei this morning, and our journey will continue, and our live stream will continue by today and tomorrow. After arrival of Dunhuang, you could follow our accounts at different platforms for our follow-up reports. Thank you. That's all for today's live broadcast.